Hi, welcome to First Pages. It is that time of year where I get to wear my ghost earrings. Yay! I kind of like Halloween decorations, as you may be able to tell. So, in honor of my favorite month, which happens to be autumn, I am going to read today a story I wrote called Aspens in Autumn, and it's part of the Seasons of Love collection, and it is a romantic suspense. A combination of odors, greasy food, sweat, and desperation assailed his nostrils as Bishop Hamilton made his way across the crowded floor. He had been up for 36 hours straight and had neither the time nor patience to continue the search for much longer. Not to mention his client was hounding him every hour for updates. If only he'd closed up shop early that day. 3 days earlier, he'd been seated behind his desk admiring his view of the Superstition Mountains, contemplating a weekend jaunt to Nantucket Island to visit his best friend Grant Cutler, Grant's fiancée Taylor, and their daughter Lily. Tracking down Taylor and Lily after Grant discovered that his daughter's biological mother had put her up for adoption at birth without his knowledge, it'd taken his buddy 3 months to convince Taylor that all he wanted was to be in Lily's life, and hers too. Now the happy couple was busy planning their wedding while he was stuck in Phoenix, combing through one rowdy club after another, searching for his elusive quarry, instead of sitting on the beach with his toes buried in the sand, watching his soon-to-be goddaughter build sandcastles. Damn the television execs that made a career as a private investigator seem glamorous. If it had been anyone else requiring his services that day, he would have turned them down flat, but no one said no to Anthony Donato without considering the consequences. When the restaurateur and alleged mob boss strode into his Phoenix office flanked by 2 men who dressed an awful lot like G-men, Bishop's plans for a weekend getaway evaporated. Trying not to draw comparisons between his own 5'10", 163-pound frame and the man who towered over him by at least 12 inches, he felt a flash of envy over his potential client's thick head of hair. His own shiny dome, a genetic hand-me-down dating back at least 4 generations, added to the tough guy image he often relied upon both as a staff sergeant in the Corps and in his current profession as a PI. But every once in a while he couldn't help wondering if sporting a mop like Donato's would ensure his success with the ladies. Moving around his desk, he offered his hand to the crime lord. "How may I help you?" "Word on the street is you're the guy to go to when something lost needs found." Donato shot the cuffs on his hand-stitched Italian suit and walked over to the window, sunshine glinting off of his sleek black coif. "Nice view." "I like it." Adopting a tactic he learned during his time in the Marines, Bishop waited the man out, and it was only a matter of seconds before the notable businessman turned his back on the scenery and sauntered over to the desk. "I'd like you to find someone." Bishop had no misconceptions over the use of the word like, but he couldn't resist being a smartass. "Anyone in particular?" Donato quirked a brow, deciding for the moment to overlook the private investigator's sarcastic wit. "One of my employees disappeared last night. A young woman. She absconded with several tens of thousands of dollars of my money, and I'd like it back. And see her rightly behind bars, of course." Oh, of course. If the woman in question had stolen money from Donato, Bishop knew that prison would be the least of her worries. Still, if she'd been stupid enough to work for him in the first place, and then steal his money, she deserved what was coming to her, didn't she? "Nice rationalization, bub, but you know better than that." Silently shushing his conscience, Bishop motioned to a chair on the other side of his desk. "Please have a seat, Mr. Donato. I need to know everything you have on this woman." Donato settled into the chair, then nodded to one of the associates who'd accompanied him to the office. The man handed over a manila folder, which Donato in turn handed to Bishop. "Everything you need is in there. Find her, Mr. Hamilton, and quickly. For each day that money isn't in the bank, I'm losing interest." They both knew that lost interest wasn't the reason for urgency. Donato was not a man you double-crossed, and the longer the woman was in the wind, the longer it would be before he delivered retribution. "I'll get right on it," Bishop said, flipping open the folder. There was an 8x10, low-quality black-and-white video still of a woman with light-colored hair and perky assets, an incomplete job application which he immediately found suspect, and a single-page rap sheet with a clearer picture of the woman in the surveillance photo, listing a half-dozen charges for reckless driving. Not much to go on. No family, no bank accounts, not even a cell phone number. Find it hard to believe you added someone to the payroll who left such huge gaps on her employment application. Donato bristled. The manager who'd filled the empty position based on a wink and a smile had been dealt with accordingly, and reminders of the man's incompetency rankled. "Are you questioning my hiring practices, Mr. Hamilton?" "Not at all," Bishop replied smoothly. "I'm sure you had your reasons for allowing someone to walk in off the street and insinuate themselves into your business without so much as a background check." The two goons who stood sentry on either side of Donato exchanged worried looks. No one had ever had the gall to speak to their boss in such a fashion. On point to carry out whatever order assigned to them, they looked confused, then relieved, when their employer began laughing. "You're a funny guy, Mr. Hamilton." Donato's teeth gleamed as he expressed his mirth. The guy must keep up with his regular dental appointments. "I try." Bishop smiled and leaned back in his chair, ever watchful for subtle changes in the men that would indicate he was in danger. None came as the man's laughter gradually wound down to a chuckle. Wiping away a tear, Donato stood and straightened his jacket. "Just so we're clear, I expect results within a week. Surely you won't need more than 7 days to find her." Bishop also rose, his body language not giving away the warning bells ringing in his head like air raid sirens. "That depends on how far underground she's gone. With as much cash as she has on hand, she could pull quite a disappearing act." Donato's eyes narrowed. "Yes. Well then, I won't keep you a moment longer. Oh, and I expect daily updates. Clyde will leave you my direct contact number." Something's hinky with this whole scenario, Bishop thought, closing and locking the door behind his client. Doing business, even legitimate business, with Anthony Donato was a red flag in itself, and his gut told him there was more than met the eye with this woman, too, this Ramsey Fiorentino. Donato had 24 bodies on his payroll perfectly suited for situations like this, so why hire outside talent instead of going after her himself? And why the skimpy information packet? His spidey senses tingled, but he tamped them down. This was a simple locate and deliver, and the sooner he completed the job, the sooner he could take a week off. Maybe a couple of weeks. Visit with Grant, Taylor, and Lily on Nantucket, then head over to Martha's Vineyard to sample some wine, maybe spend a day or two in Rhode Island touring the mansions in Newport. Studying the picture of the woman who dared to cross one of the most influential, if not law-abiding, men in Arizona, he wondered if locating her was going to be as easy as he hoped. Casting one last glance at the ferry schedule out of Hyannis, he closed the tab on his computer and opened a new one, initiating a search for his latest target. As it turned out, finding Miss Fiorentino was proving to be a bit of a challenge. He assumed she'd skipped town because, well, why wouldn't she? A stash of stolen cash and the mob on her tail would be incentive enough to leave this cactus-strewn town, but his contacts in Mexico assured him no one matching her description had entered the country, legally or illegally, in the first 24 hours that she went missing, and after 2 days of scouring the airports, both public and private, bus terminals, train stations, and rental car agencies, he was left scratching his head at how she got out of Dodge. Until one of his CIs rang him up and reported seeing a woman fitting her description in a bar out by the motorsports park in Chandler. So she hadn't left the state after all. Odd. By the time he got out there, she was gone. On a hunch, he showed her picture around in some of the bars and clubs in the area, receiving affirmative nods in each one. She steals close to 50 grand and spends her time bar hopping? Did she have a death wish, or was she just plain stupid? Debating whether to head further south, he decided to head north towards Wild Horse Pass Boulevard. On his left, he saw Sidewinders, a popular biker hangout, and pulled around back, parking his Jeep in the alley. Once inside, he walked up to the bar, shouting at the leather-clad bartender in an attempt to be heard over the noise coming from, well, everywhere. "I'm looking for a woman." "Ain't we all?" came the reply. "What do you have?" "Give me a Coke." Ignoring the bartender's grunt, Bishop turned and leaned against the metal rail, surveying the darkened room carefully. This was the 11th establishment he'd visited this evening, and he was running out of options. Maybe he should head south, but he doubted. Wait! Over there! Could it be? Fishing a photo from his pocket, he squinted at the mugshot in his hand, then over at the woman loitering in the corner. At first glance, the two looked nothing alike, but he knew in his gut it was the same person. Downing the Coke for the caffeine rush, he tossed a 5 onto the bar, then took a circuitous route to the far side of the room, his eyes never leaving their target. Ramsey Fiorentino brushed her once blonde, now black hair over her shoulder and adjusted the cap on her head, retreating further into the meager shadows the wall by the restrooms provided. She held no expectation that she was out of danger, but she needed to stop and reevaluate her situation and figured a crowded bar was her safest bet. Exhausted to the point of delirium, filthy from, what was it now, 4 days without a shower, and so hungry she'd scarfed down half-eaten food from an unbussed table. She knew she couldn't go on for much longer without a plan. She also needed money, which was a hoot, because that's what had gotten her into this mess to begin with. If only she hadn't stayed late at work last weekend. So, that is the beginning to Aspens in Autumn. Looks like Bishop may have found Ramsey, but will he turn her over to Donato, or will he fall for her wily charms? To find out, click on the buy links, pick up your copy of Seasons of Love to read Aspens in Autumn and the other 3 seasonally romantic stories in there. If you like First Pages, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support of authors, and as always, happy reading.